When the hero party arrived at the 4th floor of Berrier's tower, the hero was completely shocked. The princess that he was supposed to save is now one of the 4 heavenly demon kings. The princess then cast the highest rank spirit magic, ready to blow his ass out. The hero is completely confused, because that spell can't be used if she's being controlled. This is when he realized the Pule orcs, avalanches, ambushes at night, the tower being hidden in the basin, the mana cannons on the 1st floor, and the empty 2nd and 3rd floors were orchestrated to destroy him. This made the hero completely go nuts and decided to destroy everything. That's when our MC shows up like the villain he is, and blows the hero on the spot. However, he blocks the attack. The hero then goes behind the elf and drains his vitality in exchange for mana. This makes our MC laugh, seeing how the hero fell so low. He calls Gordon, and Hillen's wrist is severed in an instant. Before Hillen can even understand what happened, Berge raises a huge ball of demonic energy, ready to destroy his ass. But this wasn't where it began. Berjedega, a demon king who has lived his life on the Demon King's standards, which were established by the first demon king in the land, sits on his throne with a sword through his heart. Following the standards, Berje had built a tower and kidnapped princesses. Then he also captured the heroes who came to rescue them, feasting on their anger and sadness, while grooming them. Despite becoming the strongest demon king in history, he sits in the pool of his blood, wondering how one of the lowly heroes he looked down on could humble him so easily. While the other heroes mock him, he then realizes his fault. The heroes he thought he was intimidating were looking down on him this whole time, proving the standards wrong. The hero eventually beheads him, but Berje uses his last strength to blow up the whole room, hoping for a second chance to maybe rewrite the standard. Berje suddenly hears someone call his name, and when he opens his eyes, he finds himself standing in a hall filled with students like him. While he wonders what exactly could have happened, he hears his name again. He then realizes that he's being called to the stage for an award. When he gets to the stage, he is given a red badge, which is usually given to students who graduate from the Demon King Military Academy. It is at that moment that he realizes that he is at his graduation ceremony, which took place 15 years ago. He has been reincarnated. Shortly after, all the graduating students get invited on stage, and as the best graduating student, Berje gets chosen to read the Demon King's standards. Standing before the whole academy, Berje recalls how the entire Demon Kingdom got humiliated by the heroes he captured while strictly following the rules of the kingdom. At that point, he determines that he'll never make the same mistake by swearing to abide by a bunch of rules that would eventually lead to his downfall. To everyone's surprise, Berje declares in front of the whole school that he will never pledge himself to something so unbelievably stupid. He then proceeds to drag the standard even more, calling it trash. The entire staff and students just stand there in disbelief, wondering how Berje, the most well-behaved student, could commit such treason. As a result of his blasphemy, Berje is made to stand trial before all the important demons in the land. For that level of treason, Berje naturally was meant to have been executed on the spot, but considering his previously exemplary conduct and outstanding talent, he is given another chance to redeem himself. The Archduke orders him to withdraw his statement and apologize to the entire demon realm, or he'd be cast out to Arin. Arin is a dimension outside the kingdom where demon kings go to die by the dozens. It could as well be considered a death sentence. During the trial, some of the other high-ranking demons protest that the level of offense he committed does not even deserve him being given a second chance. While the Archduke expects a heartfelt apology, Berje tells him boldly to send him to Arin, and that from there, he'd be able to prove his claim about the standards being nothing but garbage. The whole room erupts, and out of anger, the Archduke makes the pronouncement immediately. Berje gets sent to Arin and is banished from the land. As punishment, all the privileges which normally should be granted to him as the top demon king are cut off, and he is sent to the land without an escort. While Berje falls slowly onto the land of Arin, where humans inhabit, he wonders what it's going to be like, living around the people who unalived him in his previous life. He remarks that he had been arrogant enough to try to conquer Arin, and that was what cost him his life in the first place. Thanks to his demon wings, Berje lands safely on an icy mountain. This time, he's determined not to let the mistakes of his past get to him again while he conquers the land for good. Meanwhile, back in the Demon Kingdom, it's customary for the top graduate from the Demon Academy to serve the top demon from the Demon King Military Academy. Gordon Derrick, the top graduate of the Demon Academy, had considered it an honor to serve Berje. Before the graduation ceremony, he and the other best graduating demons had gathered to discuss how lucky he was to be assigned to a demon as powerful as Berje. Berje happens to be of the lineage of rare demonic dragons, making him a once-in-a-lifetime prodigy who'd be remembered in history. Witnessing him throw shades at the demon standards shattered their hopes completely. Despite the blasphemy, Gordon still decides to serve Berje even on Arin. When he arrives, Berger is surprised to see him, as he was told he wouldn't be getting any aid. While he tries to welcome him, Gordon lashes out at him, asking why he had chosen to humiliate the entire kingdom in that manner. Berger just stands there, wondering why Gordon, who apparently was so composed while serving him in his previous life, is genuinely crashing out in front of him. He considers telling him about his regression, but realizes it'll only make him seem insane, so he decides to keep to himself. After calming himself down, Gordon apologizes for his unruly display, declaring that he will fulfill his duty and serve Berger either way. According to the Demon King's standards, the first rule is for each Demon King to build a tower. However, the tower shouldn't be built in an excessively harsh environment, so it'd be easy for heroes to find it. Given that they're currently in a stormy area, Gordon suggests that they relocate elsewhere, as it'd be difficult for humans to make it there. He adds that monsters live in the area, so humans naturally won't want to go there. But Berger, who has a plan of his own, declares that this is exactly where he'll be building his tower. With that being said, he plants a tower seed in the ground and feeds it some of his blood for it to grow. Gordon, watching him, asks how he can easily throw away his pride as a demon king, but Berger simply replies that the standards are garbage, especially in Arin. The seed suddenly gains consciousness as it slowly assesses the power level of its user. After identifying Berger as a rare, powerful demon, it rises up to the sky, building a gigantic tower. While it builds the tower, Berger realizes that the reason demons kept dying on Arin must have been because humans found out the mechanisms of their tower creation after destroying so many of them. They probably then used the knowledge about the standards against them. When the tower gets completed, they both set in and head to the throne room. On their way, Gordon wonders why the tower is empty, because a normal tower should naturally be lurking with guardian demons and monsters. He then remembers that Berger's privileges got cut off, so he won't be getting any assistance from the Demon Kingdom. They make it to the throne room on the 5th floor, and while Berger advances towards his throne, Gordon stops him, reminding him about the second rule of the standards. The rule states that the Demon King must kidnap a prince or princess, preferably one who is close to the throne, as they yield more demonic energy. Gordon tells Berger about the closest kingdom to the mountains, expecting him to kidnap the princess with the highest succession rank so he can absorb their kingdom's rage and use it to grow quickly. To his surprise, Berger agrees to follow the rule, but states that he already has a princess in mind to kidnap. Although Gordon insists on helping, Berger makes him stay behind and guard the tower. He then sets out to kidnap the princess with the least presents from the farthest kingdom from the tower, the 13th princess of the Hilderan kingdom. When Berger gets to the kingdom and finds the princess, he tells her about his intentions to kidnap her. To his surprise, the princess simply asks if he's sure he can handle her. Thrown off course, Berger boldly replies that he's a demon king, so he can definitely handle her. The princess then submits herself easily, asking him to take her. At this point, Berger is even more surprised. He asks her if she's secretly plotting something, and she replies that she has always thought a similar fate would befall her since she was born. He warns her that he's not going to let his guard down, but she asks him to chill, stating that there's no way she'd have foreknown that he was going to be coming on that exact day. Berger then agrees and proceeds to take her with him. When he arrives back in his tower, he hands her over to Gordon, who is still pretty much pissed about his choice. He asks Gordon to take her to the 4th floor, and Gordon is quite surprised as he had expected her to be kept in prison. Berger then tells him that the princess didn't show any resistance throughout, so he'd like to show her a bit of leniency as well. The 4th floor turns out to be cold and empty. When the princess gets taken there, the awareness of the kidnapping finally hits her as she realizes that she might not be able to experience her life of luxury anymore. Still, for some reason, she finds the dark, cold floor comforting. The following day, Berger receives an invitation from the Tower of Beasts, which has been established on Arin long before his arrival. Gordon tells him it's probably an invitation to welcome him as a new demon king, but Berger replies that it's most likely just a pathetic attempt to haze him and throw him around. Demon kings are fundamentally too proud to join hands with anyone else. However, in Arin, an unprecedented factor, the demon kings are forced to go against their pride and work together. Berger had ignored them in his past life, thinking they were weak-minded, but now that he's among them, he decides it wouldn't hurt too much to have some light exchanges with them. Later, when they arrive at the Tower of Beasts, they meet a wolf-like demon who introduces himself as Draxon, the Demon King of Beasts. Draxon claims to have been ruling over his vicinity for 70 years, asking if Berger is the new Demon King, while trying to intimidate him. He brings up the whole issue with Berger's mockery, but Berger snaps back, asking if he's here to make fun of him. Not relenting, Berger asks him in a very unruly manner to get straight to the point. Draxon then tells him the Archduke had instructed him to watch over him throughout. Hearing that, Berger intentionally roasts the Archduke, calling him a noisy vampire geezer. Draxon gets furious when he hears him address the Archduke in that manner. He drops a huge piece of meat he was eating and asks Burji to lick it, or else his impudence will not be pardoned. Burji simply asks if he really doesn't know why he's in Arin. Draxon replies that he was banished for mocking the standards of the Demon Kings. Burji then steps on the meat Draxon had dropped, cracking the ground in the process. He points out that it is also forbidden for Demon Kings to kill each other in that same orthodox, but looks at Draxon dead in the eyes, asking if he seems like the type to follow such rules. At that moment, Draxon feels chills run down his spine as he has never met any demon with such a level of aura. Sweating under his skin, he hurriedly tells him that the Archduke had asked him to confirm if he had kidnapped a princess as expected. He states that if Burji does not report within a month, he will lose his authority. But Burji interrupts him, telling him it has been sorted, as he has already kidnapped a princess who suits his taste. He then takes his leave immediately after with Gordon. Back at his tower, Gordon remarks that Burji has finally shown the majesty of a demon king, and Burji replies that it was simply something he had to do to keep the Beast King off their backs for the meantime at least, even though he tells Gordon to prepare for the worst at any time. Shortly after, he asks Gordon to go and check the princess's condition, while stating that they need to find a way to put her to good use. When Gordon leaves, Burji thinks to himself about how troublesome things might be for them in Arin, because there's a chance that the other Demon Kings might equally hold a grudge against him. He then realizes that the consequences of mocking the standards might actually be beyond him. Deep in thought, he remarks that even if he were given another chance, he'd still make the same decision, as he'd rather die than make the same mistake of bowing his head to garbage. Burji then decides to check his point balance for the reward obtained for kidnapping a princess. Since he had abducted one of the princesses with the lowest ranks, he expects his reward to be only a few hundred demonic energy points. When he checks the balance, he is shocked to find out that he has been awarded 13,000 points. While he wonders why he got so many points, he receives a video recording from Draxon, congratulating him on his feat. Draxon states that he's truly impressed, as what Burji achieved is in no way an easy feat. Still wondering what's going on, Gordon returns, calling out to Burji about a problem with the 4th floor. When Burji gets there, he is shocked to see that what was an empty room has now become an ecosystem booming with life. He finds it strange because, from his knowledge, only one spiritist on the continent is capable of something like that, and it's definitely not the 13th princess. That's when it dawns on him that the princess he kidnapped isn't the 13th princess. When he asks about it, the princess just smiles at him and introduces herself as Ernan Hildurin, the first princess of the kingdom of Hildurin. Meanwhile, in the Hildurin kingdom, reports get to the king about the sudden abduction of his first and most precious daughter. The king then immediately goes into a rage as he summons the strongest heroes of the entire kingdom to kill the demon king responsible and bring back his daughter. Ernan smirks at Burji, reminding him that she asked him earlier if he could handle her. Realizing that she is the genius elemental mage who is full of mana, he asks her how she was able to fool him back then. Ernan then shows him a ring, which she claims is responsible for hiding her mana, and calls it her family heirloom. After successfully fooling him, she asks him if he wants to send her back, but Burji considers his chances. He thinks about it and notes that not only will he be mocked and thought of as a coward, but it'll be harder for him to collect demonic energy, so for these reasons, he must stick it through. Suddenly, he gets notified that he's been targeted, and there's rage has been sent towards him. This boosts his demonic energy points. Burji then tells Ernan that nothing changes, no matter who she is, and she's still his hostage. Meanwhile, in Hildurin, the king yells at his men to kill the demon king and bring back his daughter. They try to calm him down because they do not even know who they are up against. They also tell him to wait while their patrols come back with info, but the enraged ruler yells at them to hurry and figure things out. As he yells at them, saying they aren't doing anything, his royal advisor tells him something is off. He tells the king that the demon king of lust recently kidnapped another nation's prince, and that brought the rage of too many, which led to his demise by the heroes. Despite such a situation, another demon king appears out of nowhere to kidnap Ernan. Everybody processes what it means, and the king says the demon king must be a new one. Some seconds later, a guard reports that they have found traces of teleporting magic which headed north, and the assumed destination is the Urgist Mountains. Shocked, the king realizes how far apart it is from their kingdom. Back at Burji's castle, Gordon informs Burji that the Hildurin army will arrive soon, and he asks Burji if they won't be too much for him to handle. To his surprise, Burji smiles and tells him not to worry because the Hildurin kingdom won't be able to show up. He explains by saying his tower is at the very edge of the northern continent, which is the farthest from the Hildurin kingdom. Because of that, all the nations located between them can't let the Hildurin army march through. Left with no choice, they'll be forced to employ a hero guild. Just as Burji had predicted, the Hildurin king contacts the hero guild for help. Later at the guild, a lot of heroes learn that Princess Ernan has been kidnapped, But after seeing that the destination is Ergist, they turn it down because the place is known to be full of hellish monsters. Some don't care less, and they don't mind if the Hildaran king suffers. Berge explains his perfect strategy to Gordon by letting him know that the Hero Guild won't budge since they care about money and won't want to risk their lives by going somewhere dangerous. He makes it known that it was the reason he built the tower in Ergist. Gordon is surprised by Berge's knowledge, and he even wonders if Berge has been to Arin before. Sometimes later, the king gets mad after finding out that no hero wants to take the job to rescue his daughter. During that time, Berge makes plans, knowing it'll take a while for the king to form a proper guild to come after him. He goes through his status window and sees that he doesn't have enough demonic energy to deal with a whole army of heroes. He recalls the fear while remembering the past heroes who slew him. So he tells Gordon to contact Draxon, and he's going to sell demonic energy in exchange for money. The assistant lags to process what he just heard, but when it clicks, he yells out of surprise and wonders if Berge has gone mad. This is because the demonic energy is the currency of dreams, which lets demons transcend their limits. In short, the more demonic energy, the more intimidating and powerful the demons are, so it sounds ridiculous that Berge would want to sell his. Berge affirms once again and lets him know that he won't be able to stop the heroes with the amount of demonic energy, but with human money, he can try. After contacting Draxon and selling some demonic energy points, Berge goes to Holton's work, a place near the Ergist Mountains fortress city. While dashing towards the city gate, the guards try to stop him, but Berge doesn't stop running. Instead, he introduces himself as a mercenary and then tosses them a gold coin. They let him in and start arguing about how they'll split it. Berge, who is new to the city, realizes that he'll need a guide, so he heads to a mercenary guild headquarters. There, the guildmaster drinks and blabbers on how fake the rumor of a new demon king is. The rest of the men in the guild tell him about Arin, who got kidnapped by the new demon king, but the drunk bozo brushes off the idea. He believes it's too illogical due to how far apart Ergist and Hildaran are. The men also talk about how the whole thing is a facade to milk more money. He laughs with the rest of them regarding the heroes who would do anything to make more money. From behind, Berge spooks him after learning a few things. Seeing that they are quite knowledgeable, he orders one of them to stay behind while the rest should get lost. They get offended and charge to strike him down on the spot, but Berge one-shots them so easily that they lie sprawled on the ground. A huge guy even attacks him with a mallet, but Berge stops the strike with his arm before hitting the man away. While archers pull up and try to take him down, the drunk blabbermouth from earlier grits his teeth in fear after realizing how terrifying Berge is. Meanwhile, outside the guild, passers-by hear the commotion, and they don't find it surprising since it's not unusual. After a while, everything quiets down, so Berge talks to the only conscious person in the room, telling him he'll spare him if he answers his question. The man folds and begs for his life. Berge then asks for the location of the slave market, so the man takes him there. Berge sees that they are only humans, so he asks if there are other races. While at it, he hands the man a huge purse filled with gold coins. The blabbermouth instantly leads the way, while grinning from ear to ear. There, Berge learns that humans and demons have one thing in common. They can do anything for their desires. As the man takes Berge to a separate room, Berge recalls telling Gordon about his plan to acquire an elf slave, preferably to act as a spy and create chaos among the heroes. During that time, Hero Hill and Cargill of Hildaran meets with the king and promises to rescue the princess and bring the demon king's head in the name of justice. At the slave market, Berge believes using an elf for his operation will be very good since elves are very innocent. The slave master shows up and asks Berge who he's buying. Berge tells him he'll take the elf. Then he tells the slave master that the guild captain will be the one to pay. The man is shocked, but he keeps his emotions in check after Berge questions him. The captain agrees and hands the slave master some money. Berge then tells them to excuse him while he talks to the elf personally. The slave master gives him a heads up, saying the elf might go berserk, but Berge tells him not to worry about it since the guild master will pay for any damage caused. Left alone, Berge walks into the cage and magically releases the shackles binding the elf. After sensing his energy, the elf concludes Berge isn't a human but a demon. He asks Berge what business he has with him. Berge tells him he wants to give him a chance to enact vengeance on humans. The elf admits the offer is tempting, but then he says he can't trust demons as much as humans. Berge tells him he's different, and he vows to set him free in the next 50 years if he does his bidding. He reminds the elf how short 50 years is compared to their lifespan. Still, the elf reminds Berge how it's always been the goal of demons to destroy the world tree, along with the world which the elves serve and protect, so he finds it hard to trust Berge. He then thinks about it and finds it strange for a demon to seek an elf's help. After hearing him out, Berge vows on the Demon King's standards to fulfill his promise and not do harm to the world tree. The elf sees how serious he is since he knows how serious the Demon King's standard is. With that, Berger releases the shackles on his limbs and demands that the elf vow on the world tree to pledge allegiance to him for the next 50 years. The elf notes how strange Berger is. He introduces himself as Granada from the Maple tribe and says he'll only make the vow once he sees the Demon King who sent Berger. Berger casually introduces himself as the Demon King, and Granada bursts out laughing. He calls it a sick joke because there's no way a Demon King will leave his tower, where he's at his strongest, just to talk directly with a slave. While laughing his guts out, Granada says he'll pledge allegiance to Berger for 100 years if Berger truly is the Demon King. Berger takes his offer, and when they arrive at the 5th floor of the tower, Berger sits on his throne and reminds him of the 100-year contract. Granada yells at him angrily, believing it's a scam because the Demon Lord's castle isn't supposed to be empty. He complains about the tower, saying that at the rate at which things are, Berger won't last up to a year, and the hero's party will tear him apart. Granada then refuses to work with him. Berger releases his immense aura while reminding him about their contract, and Granada immediately changes his decision. The tremendous aura was proof in itself, and it made Granada realize Berger is the real deal. Also, a while earlier, on their way to the tower, Granada recalls how all the gigantic demons lurking in the mountains didn't attack them. So it confirmed his theory of Berger being the Demon King. Granada then bows and does what he promised to do for 100 years. After his vow, he expects an important assignment from Berger, but the Demon King shocks him by asking him to prepare a meal. Shortly after, Granada makes food in the kitchen and wonders if that was the reason Berger came all the way to town. He then sees a weird lady with floating elementals offering to assist him. After finishing the preparations, they gather in the dining room to feast on their meal. There, Granada learns that the person who assisted him in making lunch was the first princess of Hilderan. He immediately loses his mind while yelling at Berger for doing something so risky, despite not having any defense against the heroes. Gordon even nods to support him, but Berger tells Granada that it is the reason he bought him. He calms the elf and tells him to eat. The Demon King tries his food out and commends it. Hernan also chips in that she helped, and the elf gets confused about what's right and wrong in the tower. A while later, Berger takes Granada to the 4th floor. There, the elf asks him if he wants him to fight the heroes. Berger tells him not to, and states that if the heroes have gotten close to the tower, then it'll be over for him. He tells Granada that what he'll be doing is disrupting the human world. Berger affirms, but before that, he tells the elf he needs to check his skills. Granada logically questions his sanity, knowing fully well that he can't beat a Demon King in his tower. For that reason, Berger handicaps their sparring session by offering to use only one hand and no demonic energy. He then places a wager whereby if Granada wins, he'll reduce Granada's contract duration by 50 years. The elf gets fired up and then promises to go all out. He instantly goes on the offense, pushing Berger back with his sharp strikes. Berger parries and weaves his attacks while noting that Granada's movements are still fine despite being enslaved for a long time. He then asks if Granada absorbed the mana around him to enhance his physical abilities. He calls it a fitting style for an elf. Granada then tells him that no average elf can pull off his next stunt. He makes a hand seal and amps his arm with rocks. He then binds Berger's feet with vines and lunges at him, yelling that he's wide open. Unfortunately for him, things don't go as he expects, because Berger reminds him he's up against the Demon King. He promises not to use demonic energy, and will try his best to control his strength so he doesn't kill Granada. Granada painfully gets mollywopped despite the handicap. Later, Berger visits the Red Hawk mercenaries, and the guild captain sucks up to him. The other injured mercenaries watch dejectedly as their leader acts to the person who got them in their sorry state. Suddenly, Berger throws a bag of gold coins at them, saying it's their deposit, and the men's mood turns a complete 180. They join their leader in his glazing, which has the man wondering if he should get a new team. After that, Berger tells them he'll be adding a new member to their team. The captain immediately agrees, but the men try to stop him. But as soon as they see Granada, who appears to be in a more sorry state than they are, they cry for him and accept him as their comrades. Berger simply observes them, while noting that even though they act mediocre, they are very competent. Berger does the math and knows that Hilderan's hero who defeated the Demon King of Lust, will be on his way, so Berger orders the Red Hawk mercenaries to investigate Hilon. After returning to the tower, Berger notes that it's time to get stronger. Normally, the demonic energy points can be used to enhance the tower or the Demon King himself, but since Berger had sold all his points, the only way for him to get stronger is to use the Spirit Blossom. It is a crystal of mana that sprouts after absorbing the mana of nature, and once it's consumed, it'll grant an immense boost in strength. Under normal circumstances, nature has been tampered with by humans, but the Urgist Mountains are a place filled with powerful monsters, so the spirit blossoms around the place must have spent long years naturally absorbing the mana of nature. As a result, the blossom's energy has become very refined. Berger then sets out to find some spirit blossoms, but Gordon stops him and reminds him that it's risky and difficult to find because monsters will attack him once they see an opening. Bergie tells him he can easily deal with the monsters, but he notes that finding the spirit blossoms will be difficult unless they have a mana detector. Coincidentally, they hear a knock at the door and see Arin asking them if they are busy. An idea immediately pops into Bergie's mind, so he takes her out of the tower with him. When they leave the place, she jubilates, saying she's been bored lately. She then tells Bergie to keep his promise to let her decorate the 4th floor the way she wants if she successfully finds what he's looking for. He agrees while wondering what she means by that, since she's already decorated the place. While she thanks her stars for knocking on their door, Bergie places his arms around her and then takes off high into the air. At first, Arin screams her lungs out, but after several seconds, she opens her eyes and sees how vast the world looks. She's impressed because she never got to see it since she was always locked up in her kingdom, training and studying. She always thought that's what she'd do till she croaked, but here she is, peering over the mountains. Happily, she asks Bergie if he knows she's the only human to fly over the Urgest Mountains. Bergie couldn't care less, and he refers to her as Princess, but she tells him to call her by her name. Bergie pauses for a moment, then he lifts her by her hands and reminds her that she's a hostage, so she shouldn't get carried away. After threatening to lock her in an underground prison, Arin complies and then sends her spirits to look for the spirit blossoms. Bergie believes it'll take the apparitions a while to find the spirit blossoms due to how vast the mountains are, but he's grateful because they'll be far faster than he and Gordon. To his surprise, the spirits return quicker than expected, and Arin tells him they found it. When they get there, they see the spirit blossom is guarded by Pule orcs. Bergie tries to act decently by ordering them to obey him and hand over the flower, but the monsters refuse, knowing fully well he's the demon king. Bergie realizes that logic doesn't work with the ape-like creatures, so he decides to do battle with them. He burns them to crisps with his dark flames, and it surprises Arin just how powerful he is. By nightfall, Bergie has successfully taken down the orcs. With them out of the way, Arin stares at the spirit blossom closely, noting it's so pure in mana. Bergie scolds her not to covet it, and he grabs the plant. He then tells her she can have one if she finds more. Unfortunately, they don't find any other, so Bergie takes her back to the tower. At the tower, Bergie observes the spirit blossom and notes that Arin is more capable than he expected. Suddenly, Gordon informs him that he has received a message from Granada. He looks grim while he informs Bergie that Granada said Hilan has teamed up with 32 other heroes and they have departed from the Hilderan capital. He says they are not heading directly toward Urgest, but they are forming a party and completing villagers' quests. That way, they'll get stronger on their way to Urgest. He shows Bergie the plans he has prepared for the hero's journey, but Bergie shocks him by dismissing the plans. He tells Gordon that they won't be sending monsters or interruptions to the hero's journey because half-baked interruptions only make the heroes stronger. He then orders Gordon to tell Granada to have the mercenaries tag along the hero's journey and build their trust by helping them. Gordon tells him he isn't following the standard again. Worried, he reminds Bergie that they can't stop the heroes with their current tower, but Bergie tells him not to worry. He says he'll reinforce the tower with a dwarf. At this point, Gordon loses it because to him, Bergie is simply picking races instead of thinking of ways to help them combat the hero's forces. He yells at Bergie, saying they'll be called a laughingstock if they see a dwarf in their tower. Bergie stares at him seriously while wielding his dark magic, and it forces Gordon to shut up. Bergie then corrects himself, saying he needs a dwarf for their magical tools. He reminds Gordon that the heroes are used to being welcomed on the first floor with weak monsters, but he'll make his own case different. He then cues Gordon in about how shocked the heroes will be when they are welcomed with dozens of cannons on the first floor. Gordon thinks about it for a second, but then says it's far from the standards. He looks at the throne again and sees Bergie has flown off, so he freaks out, believing the Demon King is probably heading to abduct someone else. Meanwhile, in Wolfnir, the dwarven underground city, the best dwarven blacksmith, Logar Friedrich, is Bergie's next target. Upon arriving at Wolfnir, Bergie observes the place while noting that it's his first time visiting Wolfnir, even though he had fought a lot of dwarves in his past life. Well disguised as a human, he goes over to the nearest inn and offers the innkeeper some coins before asking for the best place to get the best weapons made for him. The dwarf immediately snags up the coins and praises Bergie for knowing how greedy their kind is. He then instructs Bergie to head to the lowest floor found in the hole in the middle of the city, and he'll discover Logar, the city's best blacksmith. Bergie does as he's told, and he finds Logar beautifully crafting a weapon, astonished not just by his craft but also by the way Logar manipulates mana while working. After the brief observation, Bergie sneaks up on Logar to abduct him, but to Bergie's surprise, flames pour out from the dwarf's weapon, so Bergie instinctively falls back, wondering how Logar was able to detect the small amount of demonic energy. While at it, Logar leaps into the air with his hammer to strike Bergie, and from the dwarf's movement, Bergie realizes Logar is a hero, so they clash. And as Logar confirms his heroic status, he calls Berja a demon and vows not to let him leave the city. To Logar's greatest surprise, Berja calls him a weakling, before grabbing the dwarf by the neck and announcing that he's a demon king. A few seconds later, the security forces barge into Logar's workshop after hearing a ruckus, but they find no trace of their hero, and once they realize he's been abducted, they order the other guards to lock the premises and search for Logar and his abductor. By then, Berja, who has flown to the building top, observes the area and he threatens Logar to quiet down, else the dwarf would get it. Curious, Logar wonders why a demon king would show up at Wolfnir, and he even concludes Bearer has come for their princess, even though Berja has insisted he's less concerned about her. Based on the rumors Berja heard about dwarven blacksmiths digging an underground passage, he orders Logar to guide him through his, and the legendary blacksmith curses under his breath for being so unlucky to come in contact with Berja, especially since he's too scared to fight the demon king. Seeing that Logar isn't ready to budge, Berja makes another wager, whereby he captured the dwarven princess to spare Logar. But Logar knows that'll be suicidal for his career if he gets spared instead of the princess, so he curses at Berja because if Logan saves his own skin rather than the princess, his race will torture him to death for being a coward. Berja then assures Logar by swearing on the Demon King's standards that he'll guarantee the dwarf's safety if Logar helps him out. After hearing Berja's vow to the standards, Logar chooses to help, since the Demon King's standard is the faith that all Demon Kings worship. Meanwhile, Princess Louise shows up at Logar's workshop, expecting her weapon to be ready. But once she learns that he has been kidnapped, she yells at the guards to look for Logar's abductor, or else they'll lose their heads. During that period, as Logar leads Berja through an underground passage, Berja gets uncomfortable watching the dwarves behind, so he threatens Logar, and the dwarf quickly hurries out of the hole. There, Logar catches his breath and tells Berja that his own role has ended, but the Demon King shocks him by grinning at him like a menace, before revealing that he doesn't regard the Demon King standard. After Logar realizes that he's been tricked, he wishes he had sold out the princess earlier, but since the worst has come to it, he decides to beg for his life by offering to work for Berja. Berja reminds Logar about his heroic status, but the dwarf doesn't care one bit about it. He just wants to find a way to survive. After seeing Logar's determination, Berja orders him to swear his allegiance to him if he wants to be spared. Immediately, Logar worships the great demon to escape from Berja's clutches once chanced and sends an army to hunt after him. Unfortunately for Logar, the next time he opens his eyes, he finds himself in the fourth tower of Berja's castle. When Gordon sees Logar, he nearly goes mad trying to explain to Berja the consequences of his actions, because not only did he bring someone from a dwarven race, a tribe that hates demons, but a hero nevertheless. As Berja silences Gordon, Granada connects with them to give a status report, but he is shocked when he sees a dwarf in the castle. So to avoid another level of bickering, he tells Granada to give his report later. Elaine, on the other hand, walks up to Logar while wondering if he had shown up to rescue her, but still dazed, Logar faces Berja and asks why he's in the castle, since he had expected Berja's form of mercy to mean letting him go. Berja then clarifies the air by saying he meant Logar gets to live, and with that out of the way, Logar asks how he got to the castle, so Berja explains that it was only natural for him to knock Logar out before carrying him. At this point, Logar's sanity snaps and he starts laughing cynically. After realizing that there's no hope for him, he replies to Berja that he's happy to be of service to him. This makes the tyrant ruler very glad, so he instructs Logar on his first mission, which is to install a large number of cannons on the first floor needed to destroy the heroes. Later that night, Granada, who is at the Ergist Heroes Journey Preparation Station, informs Berja over a status window that the Heroes Squadron believes that the current Demon King can produce black flames, so they're utilizing fire-resistant gears. Also, because Berja hasn't sent any monsters their way, the squadron thinks he's a coward who is scared to face them. Once Berja learns of this, he notes that his plan is moving accordingly, and he plans not to send them monsters so that they will lose interest and won't grow. With that, he tells Granada to keep him updated and continue monitoring them. After the call, Granada notes that Berja is very knowledgeable when it comes to humans, and he wonders if there's ever been a demon king like Berja. As he regroups with the squadron, Granada thanks his stars that he's not Berja's enemy. At the same time in the castle, Berja orders Logar to remodel the first floor however he likes, but he should ensure that he doesn't use monostones when building traps. Logar immediately disagrees with him by saying that such traps won't work on the heroes, but Berja insists because the heroes are blessed with outstanding energy sensory abilities, and they'll figure out such a trap in no time before it activates. Logar still tries to disagree, but Berja, who's running out of patience, switches on his black flames and threatens to have Logar replaced. Frightened, the dwarf stammers while informing Berja that there's a way, and he has invented a magical tool to conceal mana traces. The downsides are that it takes 3 years to invent, and the recent one he made is currently in his workshop. At first, Berja believes the coward simply wants to find a way to run away, so he threatens Logar. But seeing that the dwarf hasn't changed his stance, Berja decides to trust him a little. So he places a collar around Logar's neck and calls it a magical tool that can blow off at the snap of his finger. Seeing how terrified Logar is, Barry informs Logar that the tool is meant to change his face, to prevent people from knowing his identity, and if he takes it off, Barry will consider it as escaping. Right there, Logar agrees to leave the collar on, so they embark on a month's journey in gathering the materials needed to make the trap, which Barry stores in his subspace pocket. Eventually, they arrive at Wolfnir and crawl through Logar's secret passage, which leads to his workshop. While at it, Louise screams her lungs out at the officers for failing to find Logar and his captor ever since the incident. The men explain how the blacksmiths in general dig up multiple holes, and it's taking them a while to investigate all of them. Also, based on logical reasoning, Berja and Logar must have left the city. Louise agrees with their logic, but she threatens the guards to find them in 2 weeks, or else she'll lop off their heads. Terrified, the men rush out of the workshop to continue their search, while the princess checks around the workshop. She picks up her unfinished weapon that Logar hadn't finished, and she squeezes it into a ball, while hoping Logar doesn't die before he makes her weapon. In that instant, Logar pops up from an underground tunnel in his shop, and despite the face-interfering mask in action, Louise concludes he is Logar since it's Logar's secret tunnel, so she calls out to him, and he answers her out of fear. As a result, she concludes that he went into hiding because he didn't want to make her weapon, even though Logar tries to explain himself out of it. The thick-skulled brute of a princess prefers to settle it with her fist, so she informs him that he'll be making her weapons for the rest of his life, but before he gets to work, she asks him to grit his teeth. Logar immediately screams like a girl, so Barra shows up and repels Louise, and she wonders who he is. Thankfully, he has his own face mask interference put up, so she can't tell or register who Barra is. He then orders Logar to get the equipment while he handles the princess. He replies to her that he is Logar's master, and she gets pissed after realizing he was the one who kidnapped her supposed servant, so she leaps at him and throws a barrage of fists, but Berta parries and returns some hits. But while at it, she grabs his foot and sends him flying with a heavy blow, thinking she's got rid of him. As she announces to Logar that he's next in line, Berta immediately appears and grabs her head before returning the blow. As they continue trading hits, Berta notes that Louise was one of the strongest people he faced, despite not being a hero before his regression. And back then, she was way stronger than her current state. He wonders if he should kill her off before she grows into a beast, but then he notes that he'll use up all his demonic energy and strength to do so. Also, he isn't as strong as he used to be, and since he has shown little of his ability, he might get captured at the current rate, so they should wrap things up quickly. After being pushed to Logar's side, Berra sees the Mana's Phantom, a huge weapon that Logar had built to hide traces of mana. Once he sees that Logar isn't done with the dismantling, he threatens the dwarf and orders him to finish it within a minute. Louise leaps at them like a demon from hell, and in that instant, Berja scares Logar by telling him that he'll leave him behind if it comes to it. This frightens the blacksmith, so he ups his game. Then Berja prepares to continue his battle with the brute, noting that he doesn't know how long he can hold her out without his real strength and demonic energy. As they clash, Louise vows not to let Berja leave alive, and she'll also break Logar's leg so he'll never escape. Berja replies that she sounds just like a demon king, so he tells her to give it up because he is taking Logar and the equipment. Logar eventually dismantles it, and he signals to Berja, but Louisa gets pissed at him. But unfortunately for her, she leaves an opening so Berja kicks her away. He immediately opens his subspace and keeps the equipment in it before escaping with Logar in the tunnel. Just then, the dwarven guards show up to help, but she insults them for being too slow before ordering them to chase after Logar and Berja through the tunnel. To her surprise, the tunnel blows up, and it makes her wonder if Logar really doesn't want to make her weapon. She gets pissed and vows to personally look for him through the entire continent and make him regret what he just did. When Berja returns to the tower, he offloads the equipment on the first floor, and Gordon, who is currently cleaning the tower, looks displeased. So he asks Berja what the huge tool is, and Berja tells him it's equipment needed to stop the heroes. Within seconds, Logar compiles it. Then Berja glares at him, hoping the device is worth it, so Logar quickly turns it on, to prove the Mana Phantom is worth the trouble. Immediately, a bright light emanates from the device, and Berja gets a pop-up where he can synchronize the weapon with the tower, although it'll cost 10,000 points. Even though he has a little over the amount, Berja activates the synchronization, and immediately, the device recognizes Berja as its master, before switching from using mana to demonic energy. Berja tries asking Logar what just happened, but the dwarf excitedly denies having anything to do with it, and he calls the recent development the discovery of the century. Seeing that Logar doesn't know anything about it, Berja walks out of the castle and he orders Arin to try using any spell. Once given the permission, she creates a combination of the elements on a very large scale, and this pisses off Gordon, who had just finished cleaning the floor. As Gordon tries to get Arin to stop, Berja is surprised that such a spell of high caliber, which should be sensed even from the tower's outside, is unnoticed. Not only that, but he cannot see or sense the presence of anyone in the tower. Berja then decides to utilize the magic phantom device by manipulating the tower, and to his surprise, he completely erases the tower's presence. He then reverts it and notes that he's got a new ability which he can use to fool the heroes, although it drains his demonic energy. Later, when he returns to the castle, he sees Loger acting like a demon, who wishes to tear apart the magic phantom and the tower apart to see how well connected they are. So he permits Loger on the condition that it happens right after the weapon successfully kills the heroes. As Loger gets fired up and prays for the hero's downfall, Berja tells Ernan that she'll have to face the heroes who'll come up to the 4th floor. It surprises her given that she's a princess, but as he reminds her that she's a genius spiritist who doesn't want to return to her palace, Berja thinks about his offer as being unreasonable, since asking her to fight would be too much for a princess. But Ernan shocks him when she starts talking about which element would be the best to use against their ops. Surprised, Berja tells her that all she has to do is to reveal to the heroes that she's their enemy, and if things go as well as she wants them, he'll grant her wish again. Ernan immediately agrees with him, but on the condition that he introduces her as his subordinate and not as a princess. He readily agrees, sees it's easy to do, and it makes her happy, so she thinks of seducing the heroes with her good looks. But Berja tells her to behave as he had initially told her. Later, he goes back to his seat and checks all his preparation to ensure everything is in order. But even with that, Berja notes that even with the preparation, he can't cut the heroes down more than half of their number, since they number about 200, which means he'll have to grow stronger. So he brings out the hyacinth, which has now been tainted with demonic energy, and he notes that spirit blossoms that are tainted are effective against demons, and he'll have to gather more. So he sets out with the princess in search of more spirit blossoms, and after nearly using up the whole day in their quest, they don't find any. Suddenly, a group of pool orcs show up, and Berja, who has gotten sick of them, prepares to unleash hell on the monsters, but Krutu, the chief of the race, greets him and kneels, before asking Berja to accept the tribe as his own and take them as his kin. As they state that it's because their tribe had betrayed the demon realm, but they are ready to get back on track, Berja isn't having any of their sweet talk. So he says that they simply want to get stronger by allying with him, since they are well suited for demon energy rather than spirit blossoms. Realizing that they've been had, Krutu orders his men to show Berja the spirit blossoms they've gathered. Impressed at the orcs for not just knowing how to speak properly, but also being well versed in negotiating, Berja calls them out on it, and they tell him that they had learned that wisdom is one thing they value than strength. Sensing their honesty, Berja admits that he likes them, so Berja only bestows Krutu as his underling, and he orders the orc to roam the snowfields and grow his clan for his sake. He then orders Krutu to wait for his orders, and if he fulfills them, he will reward Krutu with something greater than strength. As Berja acknowledges Krutu as his kin and grants him his insignia, the orc transforms into a more fearful creature, so Krutu and the rest of the orcs thank him, and they vow to devote themselves to him. Time passes, and not only are the inside tower preparations complete, but also the outside, which is swarming with poil orcs. Now Berja anticipates the hero's arrival, and he vows to repay them for humiliating him in his previous life. A short while later, Hillen and the others arrive at Urger's mountains, and they prepare to go looking for the Demon King's castle. That night, the hero's squadron settles at Holton Walk, a fortress where the host prepares a banquet for the party members to enjoy themselves before they embark on their great mission the next day. Hillen thanks the fortress master, and the old man mentions how he's happy to host them since it'll give him a chance to appear on the pages of history. He then beckons on Hillen to give a speech to the squadron, so he calls their attention, and Hillen addresses them by informing them not to loosen their guards because the Demon King hasn't been sending monsters their way, and he announces that the next day will be when they'll make the Demon King pay for kidnapping Ernan. He riles them up, and as Granada watches them happily dig into their feasts, he notes that their numbers didn't increase nor reduce, and it's thanks to Hillen that a merchant group joined them and didn't leave, because Hillen soothed them. At this point, Granada worries about the tower because based on the size of the hero's party, they have an overwhelming advantage over the Demon King's tower. So he even wonders if he should stealthily eliminate some of them to even the playing field. But then he snaps himself out and notes that if the subjugation succeeds, then he'll be free from Berja. Troubled about his role, Granada makes up his mind to report to Berja, so he steps outside and briefs Berja about their progress so far. Once Berja learns that the party has arrived at Holton, he orders Granada not to contact him anymore after they leave, and he also warns Granada not only watch out for the snow while climbing the mountains, but Granada shouldn't let down his guard at night. Then he should stay far away from the castle door once the hero opens it. Before Granada can get a detailed explanation on the warnings, Hillen shows up. So Granada lies to the hero that he was simply getting some fresh air. Hillen then hands him fruit wine before asking Granada if he has something on his mind. Granada asks if they truly can defeat the Demon King, and Hillen laughs at him while confessing that he too isn't sure. He opens up about how subjugating Demon Kings has always been hellish, and it has never once gone smoothly. Curious, Granada asks Hillen about the Demon King of Lust Hillen had killed off earlier, and believes that because he has absorbed the former's powers, the new Demon King should be a case for him. But Hillen's face darkens while Granada asks him to tell the tale of his previous battle with the Demon King of Lust. Hillen then happily replies that the reason he was able to kill the Demon King was that he had brave comrades just like Granada who fought at the forefront, taking care of monsters. This time around, Hillen asks Granada to protect his flank while he leads the way, and Granada agrees. Right after, Hillen leads him inside, while telling Granada that the Fortress Master wants to hear his adventure stories. As they head inside, Hillen internally admits that he has joined forces with brave comrades, so he expects Granada to take care of him in their quest. The next morning, the heroes' group leaves for the mountains, and they are hailed as they leave the town. On their way, they pass through the mountain gorge, and one of the soldiers notes that things are progressing very smoothly, so they'll reach the Demon King's castle in no time. One of the men jinxes the whole experience by speaking badly about the monsters hiding since they haven't seen any so far, and to their surprise, a drool drops from above, and when they look up, they see a horde of massive ghouls on the cliffs, so they get into battle formation and fight the monsters. Suddenly, a giant frost appears at the front of the gorge, so Hillen tells the others to fall back. When Hillen examines the giant, he tells Wharton to get the others out of the gorge while he faces the frost giant alone. In one move, he leaps at the humongous skeleton, while noting that it can't be stronger than the Demon King of Lust, and as the creature tries to slam him on the wall, Hillen lands on the arm and dashes right at the giant. He then unleashes a slash attack that cuts it down, and in that moment, he orders his men to leave the gorge, while the giant falls to block the ghoul's path. Thankfully, most of them make it out alive, and as they catch their breath, they note that the previous Demon King's tower wasn't as difficult as what they are facing. Still, they praise Hillen for their low casualties, and after spreading the rumor of how he defeated the Demon King of Lust and absorbed his powers, all the men put their trust in the hero, and Granada even considers the matchup in Hillen's favor. Just when the men think about gathering their strength, they sight a group of Pule orcs not too far off, so Hillen prepares to eliminate them because they are relatively weak. But Granada then stops him after hearing a sound. Suddenly it dawns on him, as he remembers Bersha's earlier warning regarding the snow, and he hears Krutu declare that the party won't reach the tower. Immediately, an avalanche starts, and Granada curses Beria because he doesn't know how to avoid the incoming snow, so he yells at everyone to run for it. Meanwhile, Beria watches them in amusement, and he vows to hunt down the heroes this time around. As Beria observes the party, he notes that he had warned Granada of the snow, which the Pule orcs used to trigger an avalanche. The snow attack had swept the heroes far down the valley that they had to regroup looking for the scattered unit. Later at night, the orcs would drive more ghouls and frost giants to attack the heroes' squadron, and the attack pattern continues that way for 3 days. On the 3rd day, the squadron population reduced from over 500 members to about half its size. By that time, the party had struggled to reach one of the mountain peaks, but when they looked around for the Demon King's castle, they didn't find it. So Hillen snapped and yelled out of frustration. Upon seeing how futile their goal is, Wharton announces on behalf of his men that he'll be going back with them. Hillen tries to object, but Wharton remains adamant and reminds the hero that his men's lives matter. 6 days later, the party of over 200 members is barely above 50 due to the Great Divide, but they finally spot the Demon King's castle hidden in the valley. With their goal in sight, they rush to the castle door, and as soon as they open it, while expecting to battle off weaklings, Burge's 3rd warning kicks off. Immediately, the men are nuked with lots of Loger's cannons, and their head count is reduced from 52 to 1. That is considering the fact that Granada isn't among the number. Shocked, Hillen staggers through the 1st floor, and he yells at the top of his lungs, wondering why everything about the new Demon King isn't going according to script. He then spots Granada, who avoided the cannon barrage just in time. So Hillen tells Granada to head to the upper floor with him, and that even though they are just 2, they can take down the Demon King. After all, he has absorbed the Demon King of Lust's powers. When they get to the 2nd and 3rd floors, Hillen gets pissed after finding out that the place is empty, and he wonders why the Demon King didn't station any monsters, despite being a ton of them outside. Granada, on the other hand, knows what's coming next since there has been no change to the upper floors. So on getting to the 4th floor, Granada curses under his breath. Meanwhile, Hillen is stunned after witnessing the view for the first time. Moments later, Arin shows up in black attire, and she introduces herself as the Dark Spiritist, who is one of the heavenly kings who protects the Demon King. At this point, Granada feels humiliated by her entrance and performance, so he makes up his mind to retreat quietly. Stunned, Hillen asks Arin why she looks different, but she tries to prove to him wrong that she's another person, and she ends up summoning all the elements on a very large scale to fight him. Upon seeing the attack, Hillen immediately concludes that she's not being controlled, so he recalls how they went through all the trouble to rescue her. But now, she's the one who is attacking the hero who has come to save her. In that moment, Hillen snaps and declares he'll destroy everything. But Berga appears right behind him in his demon form and asks him if he can. He then attacks the hero with his dark flames and says he finally gets to see Hillen's face. Unfazed by the attack, Hillen looks ahead and spots Granada not too far from Berga, so he immediately dashes at him and tells Granada to combine strength with him to kill Berga off. Confused, Granada asks him how, but just then he notices his energy leaving his body, and as he falls to the ground, Hillen is completely juiced up with Granada's mana, and he tells the elf about what he meant about them fighting together. Berga realizes that Hillen has used an artifact to absorb Granada's mana, so Hillen explains that the artifact on his finger, which is known as the Elf Eater, converts elves' infinite vitality into mana. But the elf dies not long after the artifact is activated. Hillen steps on Granada as he reveals how it was his plan all along to use him, and as Granada realizes that he's been betrayed, Berga smiles and admits that he likes how vile and low Hillen is. Also, he declares that if he can take the artifact off Hillen's finger, then Hillen will lose his new powers. But Hillen tells him to give it a try. After all, the Demon King of Lust failed at it. Instantly, Berga calls on Gordon, and Hillen's wrist is instantly severed. It takes Hero seconds to realize what just happened, and when he does, he screams while clenching his wrist, and he's confused because he couldn't detect Gordon's presence. Meanwhile, Gordon, the high-ranking demon, stands right behind Hillen and tells him to quiet down. So Hillen instinctively jumps away, and he struggles to process why he almost got killed by a demon less than the Demon King. Unfortunately for him, his main problem holds him by the shoulder and tells Hillen that he isn't going anywhere. The hero turns back and notes he has to dodge. But once he sees Berga holding a huge ball of demonic energy, Hillen realizes that he's cooked, so he just accepts fate and stares as Berga tells him it's time to take a beating. The Demon King hurls down the gigantic ball of dark flame at Hillen and it causes a huge explosion. After the smoke clears out, Berga reverts to his human form, and he commends Hillen for still holding out, so he orders Gordon to lock Hillen, as well as the other humans, who got knocked out by Loger's weapon up. Granada, on the other hand, gets a glimpse of the pearly gates, but Berga saves him by giving him a spirit blossom. He wakes up and also sees Berga handing another to Ernan, before telling Loger to do as he likes with the tower. After congratulating everyone for their job well done, Berga tells them to resume guarding their floors, and he walks away nonchalantly. Granada watches him in awe and praises him for easily taking down Hillen, but Ernan observes Berga for a bit and suspects Berga is tired. When Berga gets to the 5th floor, he collapses on the ground and catches his breath, noting that he almost gave out right after the battle. What bothers Berga is that he gave all his might against Hillen, one of the weakest members of the 10 Stars, who are the heroes all over the continent, and he couldn't kill him. This was a result of Berga not being able to use much demonic energy due to the few points he had. So he had to execute his plan in such a way that he got Hillen mentally and physically exhausted, before aggravating him and causing Hillen to narrow his view. Still, Berga marvels because he attained a perfect victory without having to depend on the Demon King's standards. And for pulling it off, it shows that Berga can alter fate and get revenge on the heroes. When Wharton and his men get back to Holton Walk, the people hold a press conference demanding to know what had happened, and they get mad after hearing that the heroes' party had returned due to not seeing the Demon King's castle. This is because of the effort, hope, and investment a lot of people had poured into the heroes, so as they blame them, Wharton speaks up by telling them that Hillen hasn't returned and he is still searching for the tower, so they should wait on him. Within a short period of time, the news spread all over the continent, and it had the Hildurin king aggravated since the heroes didn't return with his daughter. Louise, on the other hand, couldn't care less, and she's still after Loger. Before long, the story was distorted and exaggerated, and as people spread rumors of Hillen's death, the world fell into sorrow, and the negative energy boistered up Berga's demonic points. During that period, Wharton is summoned to the heroic assembly, and once they confirm that Hillen hasn't returned, nor have they gotten any news about Berga's location, they decide to wait for 10 days, hoping that Hillen will return. After all, he's one of the 10 Stars. But if Hillen doesn't return after that, they plan to assemble all 4,728 heroes on the continent to launch a full-scale assault to eliminate the new Demon King. Later on in the castle dungeons, Berga checks up on Hillen and he sees that the hero has recovered from most of his wounds. So as Berga chats idly, Hillen tells him to get to the point because it makes no sense for him to be spared. Berga then decides to cut to the chase, so he asks Hillen to become his vassal. Confused, Hillen notes that he didn't expect such an offer, but Berga drops a sack of gold coins and states how expensive it must have been, coming to the tower, and how most of the costs are covered by merchant groups and nobles. In the case where the heroes defeat the Demon King, Their lives are turned around forever. But should they fail, they'll have a huge load of debt to pay. In Hillen's situation, all the investments were on him, and now that he has failed, Hillen realizes that he's in a lot of trouble, so even if he escapes from the tower, he'll be branded a failed hero and be taxed to pay up all the debts he has incurred so far. Once Hillen learns that Granada was the one who died Beria about his situation, Hillen calls Granada a traitor, and this triggers Granada, so he yells at the pot for calling the kettle black before revealing that he was always on Berja's side. Beria then opens up, saying that the reason the heroes failed was that there was no demon lord like himself. But before long, the heroes will soon adapt to his tactics, and for that, he'll need one of the strongest heroes to interfere with their plans to prevent them. Berja says all this while showcasing Armani's orb, a substance which is used to monitor one's subordinate and can help the masters know if such a subordinate bears hostility towards them so they can easily kill off the subordinate. He tells Hillen not to resist, but Hillen speaks of how his body will instantly reject the orb was ingested. Unfortunately, Granada tells Beria that such rejection can only arise if the hero wills it. So Beria shoves the orb down the hero's throat, and as the orb begins to take effect, Granada asks what Beria will do if Hillen dies due to rejecting the orb. But Beria assures him that it won't happen, because the last thing a scumbag like Hillen will choose to is to sacrifice themselves. Immediately, the orb registers Hillen as Berja's vassal, and Hillen curses himself for choosing to stay alive. Later that day, Beria discusses with Gordon, who speaks of how Hillen being a new vassal will be heavily restricted due to the 100,000 gold debt on his head. So as he reminds Beria of how the coins Beria got from selling his demonic energy were far too little compared to Hillen's debt, Gordon wonders how Beria plans to gather more money. That's when he sees Beria smiling back at him and informing him that he'll soon receive a message which is about the Unison of Towers, a gathering of demon kings which is held once every year. In Beria's past life, he never attended the meeting because he disregarded it. But now, he believes that the demon kings, who have ruled longer than him, will have lots of gold in their treasures. Once Gordon sees where Beria is headed, he doesn't scream, which is unusual for him. And this is because he realizes that Beria is actually promising, despite his despicable means, so he has no choice but to admit it. They suddenly receive a message, and once Beria learns that it's an invitation to the Unison of Towers, he tells Gordon to follow him because they are going to swindle his senior demon kings. Beria arrives at the Tower of Lies, and when he gets to the 13th floor, he sees all the demon kings already seated, and he asks them if they have a lot to discuss about him. Once Draxen sees him, Draxen angrily calls Beria's name, but Reyna, the demon king of winters, coldly calls Beria the talk of the town. Ugar, who is the demon king of indestructibility, glares at Beria after recalling how Beria had insulted the demon king's standards. Lastly, Jason, the demon king of lies, happily welcomes Beria, but Beria calls all of them fools, accusing them of allying their title. As he tries to rile them up, Ugar snaps at Beria and yells at him for interfering with their affairs despite being a newbie. From Ugar's reaction, Beria can tell that Ugar wants to kill him, so he provokes the Cyclops more. But Jason claps once to stop them from taking a swing at each other. Then he tells them that they are to cooperate and not waste anybody's time. Surprised that Jason eliminated their killing intent with just a clap, Beria wonders how Jason had pulled it off, and he isn't sure if it's Jason's innate ability or the towers. As they return to their seats, Beria is fixated on the ability that he even compares to the magic phantom, which is synced to his own tower. So he chooses to keep his guard up. Jason then commences the meeting by asking them to voice their opinion, and since nobody refuses to talk, Draxen starts by asking Beria about Hillen's whereabouts. Meanwhile, in the reception room, Draxen and Jason's aides ask Gordon the same thing, but Gordon lies to them that Hillen didn't enter Beria's tower, and he's most likely wandering around. They don't believe him at first, and tell him that Hillen should have spotted their tower from afar. But then Gordon reveals that Beria didn't follow any advice from the Demon King's standards, and once they recall how Beria acted on his coronation day, they all understand. Surprised that all the aides want to know about Hillen, Gordon remembers how Beria had warned him to stay silent about Hillen because Beria needed him as a spy. Their behavior confirms Beria's theory, and even though Gordon is impressed by Beria's behavior, he complains to the others about how Beria is a thorn in his flesh. While doing that, he feels very satisfied like most women when they nag about their spouse, and to his surprise, the other aides relate with him, and they also complain about their own masters. There, Gordon realizes that all he ever needed was emotional support. Back at the meeting room, Beria informs them that Hillen didn't make it to his castle because he didn't erect it at the peak of the mountains, and as they buy his lie little by little, Jason asks Beria if Hillen is still searching for his tower because it's foolhardy for Beria to leave his tower defenseless and attend a meeting, since it's common knowledge for them to know that a demon king who loses his tower will meet a dreadful end. Berja immediately tells Jason not to pry into his matters. After all, he has his own way of defending his tower, and he notes that Jason is pissing him off. Immediately, Jason backs off on the matter, but Draxen reminds him that Arcane won't take it lightly, but Berja brushes him off and rudely speaks of the old vampire. Although pissed, they move on with the matter, and as they continue with their discussion, Berja notes that he doesn't mind being suspicious as long as he doesn't disclose his plans to the Demon Kings. Also, Berja hasn't forgotten the main reason he came over, which is to get 100,000 gold coins from the Demon Kings. As he watches them discuss, Berja studies Jason and notes that he must be on the higher side of the hierarchy for him to listen in on the leaders and know which of them is low on demonic points. While observing, Berja sees Reyna, who signals to him, so they go to the balcony to discuss privately. There, she tells him that she has always wanted to talk to him and opens up to him that she agrees with some of his points. Surprised, Berja wonders if she was always like this. But then she clarifies herself by telling him that she still follows the Demon King standards, but she feels that Demon Kings in Arin need to be flexible. She examines him and tells him he looks better than she had thought after meeting him in person, so she hands him her personal transmitter for them to communicate if he needs advice. But the condition is that he doesn't insult the standards right in front of her if he wants her to play along. As she walks back into the tower, Berja asks her about Jason, and she tells him that she can't read him, and he's better than Draxen and Ugar. Before returning to the tower, Berja notes that he can't fully trust Reyna yet, but he calls her an unexpected gain. Back at his tower, Arin prepares a bunch of cookies, so she asks Logar to try one out. Once he learns that Berja had gotten her ingredients, as she had asked, he decides to try it out while hoping to commend her no matter how it tastes, since she isn't used to cooking, but he is surprised when the phenomenal taste hits him and moves his mana. So when she asks him about it, he commends her, and she happily tells him she has put spirit blossoms in the dough. Utterly shocked, Logar asks her why she used something so precious, but Arin calls it a gift so that they stay close after all. They'll be seeing each other for a long time. She then hopes Granada and Berja will enjoy the cookies. Meanwhile, in the Tower of Lies, Berja returns to the meeting table and he only sees Jason there, so he learns that the others have all gone. Jason then asks if they'd like to have some tea since they need to talk, and Berja is surprised, so he wonders what they have to talk about. Jason then reveals that he knows that Berja is in need of humans' money, and this shocks Berja, so he asks Jason what he means by that. Hearing those words from Jason, Berja gets taken completely by surprise as he wonders where such information could have possibly leaked out from. Not wanting to reveal his intentions, he immediately asks what Jason is talking about, but Jason tells him it's pointless trying to pretend, as Draxen had told him earlier. He then cuts to the chase and decides to offer Berja a huge sum of human money in exchange for demonic energy points. Although things are going just the way Berja wants them, he can't shake off the feeling that the King of Lies, who is presenting himself to be on his side, probably has an ulterior motive. Still, he's in dire need of the money, so he has no choice but to go with the transaction. After completing the transaction, Berja arrives back at his mansion with the money and offers Hillen the agreed amount. Seeing the money, Hillen is surprised at the fact that the Demon King had kept his side of the bargain. Berja then asks him to do his best to hide the source of the funds. He believes that if Jason were to sense the flow of the money and figure out their actions perfectly, then they'd be good as puppets in his hands. So he concludes that their best cause of action would be to act as cautiously as possible. Just like Hillen, Berja had also turned the rest of the surviving humans into his black knights and mages. He then instructs Hillen to use them to grow the money, as he has already programmed them to follow his orders to an end. Hillen looks at things from a brighter perspective, considering the fact that he and a good number of humans were able to survive. Since the mission wasn't a total failure, he believes he could go back to working as a hero once he fully pays off his debts. He then gets cocky and extends a handshake to Berja to commemorate what he refers to as their business partnership. At that moment, Berja snaps. While causing the hero an immense amount of pain for being cocky, he spells it out that they're not in any form of partnership, and that Hillen should know his place and act like a proper slave. He then orders him to leave as he excuses himself. Before Hillen leaves, Arin approaches him and hands him a letter she wants delivered to Elena, the 13th princess. Upset, he asks why she decided to side with the Demon King in the first place, blaming her for making him get humiliated up to this point. Hearing him rant, she immediately apologizes, but makes it clear to him that she has no intention of returning to the kingdom. She makes mention of a certain secret of the Hilderin kingdom, which Hillen also seems to be aware of, but he had assumed they were only false rumors up until that point. Confirming the rumors to be true, he then finally understands the princess's actions and agrees to help her deliver her letter. When Hillen and the rest of the humans leave, Gordon confronts Berja and shares his concerns about the hero disobeying his orders. Berja then points out that unlike most other humans, Hillen doesn't possess the human crassness that makes him obsessed with money, but rather, What he seems to be after is popularity. He then remarks that with someone with that kind of zeal under their control, they'd be sure to get their objectives down in the best possible way. Shortly after, Arin shows up, asking if they'd like to try her cookies. Seeing her walk in so casually, Berja realizes that he has been too soft on her. He then threatens to throw her into the underground prison for a whole month if the cookies taste bad. Unbothered, Ernest asks him to try them out and see. When he tastes the cookies, Berja feels ecstasy surging through his body and almost loses it, but manages to keep himself under control. Realizing that she mixed spirit blossoms with the ingredients of the cookies, he concludes that she's trying to get him to do her a favor, so he asks about it. Meanwhile, Hillen's hero's journey party descends safely under Krutu's escort. After arriving at Holton, they immediately depart for the kingdom of Hildren through a teleportation magic circle. Granada, on the other hand, returned to the Scarlet Hawk Mercenary Guild headquarters to establish discipline to the deserters. He punishes the men severely for leaving him, their captain, behind, and running away like cowards to save their sorry lives. While he beats the crap out of them, a young lady shows up at the building and introduces herself as Kaede, a hero. She explains that she wasn't able to join the hero's journey due to her circumstances, but states that she has finally come to join the hero's journey. Granada's men then explain that while he was gone, Kaede was the one who paid their bar tabs. Granada appreciates her for paying the tabs, but explains that the hero's journey is already over, and that Hillen already left Holton Walk. Hearing this, Kaede gets riled up as she asks for details about the expedition failure. Granada then agrees to tell her, but only reveals as much as Berja instructed him to. After sharing the story, Kaede thanks him for his time and decides to leave a few coin pieces behind as a symbol of gratitude, while she takes her leave. While she leaves, Granada's greedy assistant tries to steal the money Kaede left behind while making silly comments about her, but he gets caught in no time. When Kaede leaves, Granada notices a group of guards escorting her. Strangely enough, despite being in full armor, he doesn't hear their footsteps, so he decides to conceal his identity and follow them secretly. From his hiding spot, he's then able to learn that she's a princess who wants to give up everything for the sole purpose of becoming a hero. In that moment, he feels a blade against his neck from nowhere. A voice then rings from behind as a powerful, fully kitted guard asks who he is and why he's spying on the princess. Like that's not enough. The guard also asks why he's using suspicious magic, trying to find out if he's a spy from a different kingdom. Not wanting to be discovered as a spy of the Demon King, Granada thinks hard about what to do. But before he can explain himself, the guard deems him as a threat and starts attacking. Upon hearing a loud explosion, the other knights turn around and see Granada trying to escape, so they assume he's an assassin and instantly attack him. Left in a bind, Granada notes that he's the only elf in Horton Walk, which means he'll be easily identified if he uses his powers. But if he doesn't know if he'll escape from the knights safely. The guards warn their princess to step back, but she insists that she's a hero, and together they attack Granada. There, he makes up his mind to use his powers, but all of a sudden black flames appear, stopping his foes, and he sees Berja, who asks him why he's slacking off. The others sight Berja and realize that he's the Demon King, but Granada gets pissed at him for thinking he's been slacking off when he's been trying to escape. The knights immediately conclude that Berja has come to kidnap their princess, so they take their stance and prepare to lay their lives to protect her. Yaspin, on the other hand, tells them it's their chance to capture Berja, and they shouldn't worry about her. Surprised, Berja tells them he didn't know that there was a princess in town, but the men do not believe her. So they all ask him, including Granada, why he's around, and Berja tells them he's coincidentally running an errand, to which they yell surprisingly. Moments ago, right after trying the cookies, Berja asks Arin what she wants, and she tells him to get her Chenial powder. He knows the powder is used for spirit contracts, which was invented by an elf named Senial about 100 years ago, who defected to the human kingdom. The elf was tasked by the king to develop a supplement that would allow humans to contract spirits more smoothly. Berja, on the other hand, doesn't believe Arin needs such since she's a very talented spirit arts user, but she feigns innocence and tells him there's almost no mana in the tower, so it'll be hard for her without Senial powder. Berja sees right through her and learns that Arin wants to contract a high-ranking new spirit. In his previous life, she had done that at the age of 27, and the whole continent was in an uproar when they heard the news, since only very few people could pull that off. But now she wants to contract one 7 years ahead of the proposed time. She looks at him, surprised that he knows what she wants, because she had planned to surprise him. Berja, on the other hand, wonders maybe the tower has affected her mindset to make her accelerate his predictions. In the long run, he doesn't mind, as long as the tower's combat power increases, so he thanks her for the food and heads out to get what she requested. Currently, he creates black flames and tells the guards that he has his own circumstances, so he'll end their fight quickly. Berja fires the attack, which surprises Princess Jaspine and demolishes the area around them, but he's amused after seeing her still standing and covered in aura. Walking ahead of her men, she informs Berja that a hero's auras possesses the power to destroy demons. That's why heroes are natural enemies to demon kings. She raises her sword while yelling that her place isn't in some stuffy palace but on the battlefield. With one swing, she uses her ultimate attack, a crimson moon slash that she notes is the highest skill level of difficulty for a swordsman to attain. Jespine admits that because of her native country's low status, it's normal for her to be sold off as a wife to another king. But remembering that her betrothed is some geezer, Jespine chooses to stray from her calling and learn the way of the sword from her imperial army. Back then, she trained till she bled just to change her title from a royal to a hero. Now, as her attack homes in on Beria, she hopes to take him down. So that she's officially recognized as a proper hero, Biashes only then will she be free from her father's orders, and will she choose her husband by herself. Beria, on the other hand, doesn't evade her skill nor parry it. Instead, he breaks the condensed aura blade sent his way, crushing Jespine's hope of defeating him. As petty as always, Berja summons multiple fiery attacks from the sky and expects her not to die from the barrage, given that she's a hero. At this point, reality dawns on her that she's facing a monster who smirks at her, noting she'll be useful to him in many ways since she's both a hero and a princess. She sweats buckets while her men yell at her to get back, but they are too late to stop the barrages from hitting them all. Minutes later, people gather after the sound of the explosions and they sense a demon's residual energy in the area. When they see the fallen injured knights, they rush to heal them, but the knights inform them that Princess Jespine was taken by the Demon King. Shocked to learn that a Demon King had come to their town, the people conclude it's Beria who stays in Ergust. Later at Beria's tower, in the underground dungeon, Ernan sees Jespine unconscious in a cell, so she asks Beria if she's Kaniel, but he tells her that she's Kade Jespine, the 9th imperial princess. He then tells Ernan that Jespine is injured so she should treat her, because she will be staying on the 4th floor for now. Confused, Ernan asks him why he kidnapped another princess, then he tells her that he simply saw her on the way so he took her. Also, he needs to do this kind of stuff to restock his demonic energy points. Cluelessly, she asks him what he means and Beria nearly spills the beans before realizing that he's talking to one of his hostages. He quickly corrects himself, noting that he'll go and get the saniel powder like she ordered. While at it, he wonders if the reason he nearly spilled some of his secrets to Ernan is because he has gotten too comfortable, seeing her a lot. Afterwards, the news of Kade getting kidnapped in Horton Walk spread across the continent, so at the heroes' headquarters, the heroes make Hillen swear to confirm that he didn't run into Beria's tower while on the expedition. He apologizes to them for failing to locate the tower and vows to take full responsibility for it. But they let it slide, reminding him that if they scold any hero who fails at an expedition, no one will choose to step up for the next one. They change topic to Kade, who was recently kidnapped, and inform Hillen about how Jespine's kingdom is requesting for Hero's expedition to get their princess back. To their surprise, Hillen starts by first apologizing for the princess's fate, before telling the Board of Heroes how he couldn't find the Demon King's tower. So launching an expedition isn't a wise move, and the best is to launch a small scout team. After they have found the castle, they can now prepare a subjugation team. He convinces them that Beria isn't confident in his power, which is why he chooses to hide himself, and they all agree since it's very illogical for demon kings to go against their code. After hearing all the heroes' opinions who agree with Hillen, the head of the board postpones the subjugation party. Right after the meeting, Hillen heaves a sigh of relief and internally questions himself if he's doing what Beria wants by using his authority as a hero to block the expenditure. He then notes that he has bought Beria time, so he should handle the rest. Later on, Gordon informs Beria of Hillen's report, and Beria realizes that it's thanks to securing Hillen as his vassal that they are able to stall such a huge problem from arising. He looks at his resources and notes that they can help him delay the expenditure. Also, kidnapping Kade has helped him rack up demonic energy points, so if he uses Ahriman's orb on her, he can add her to his combat assets. With Logar modifying the first floor for better attack and defense system, and Krutu expanding his influence further, once Ernan can successfully contract a high-ranking spirit, the tower's defense will be completed. Only then will heroes be fearful of the place and will refuse to embark on expeditions, and that will be the time Beria can begin his true revenge on them. For his plans to come to fruition, he goes to the City of Magical Engineering, a place overflowing with mages and heroes, a place called Amur, to get senial powder. Standing right at the outskirts, he hopes he doesn't get caught because the place's difficulty is too high. In the Magic Kingdom's capital, Beria goes to Jetson's Paradise, Amur's outskirts. There, the shop owner learns from the newspaper how Jespine, the 9th princess, was kidnapped right after the hero expedition ended. Not only that, the news of Logar, the dwarven hero being hunted down, doesn't escape his ears. Suddenly, his door swings open and Beria comes in, demanding for senial powder. The shopkeeper grins, saying he has it. But Beria looks down on the shop, noting that because Akan Kingdom is a place where heroes, mages, and alchemists from all over the continent gather, he wouldn't want to go to famous shops as he could run into heroes or mages who could discover his identity even if he hid it. For that reason, he picked a rundown shop not too far from the town. Presently, the shopkeeper calls Berya lucky and offers to sell a bottle of the powder for 1 gold. He shows Berya the bottle, but Berya tells him to pipe down and retorts that the price is quite high. Also, the Keniel powder he knows is green, so the purple one currently being sold to him looks strange. Despite the abnormalities, the shopkeeper tells Berya not to worry because the purple Keniel powder is the latest variant made in secrecy which hasn't hit the main market. The man sweet-talks Berya to buy it, insisting that the item is rare. Meanwhile, he just wants to scam Berya, believing he must have a reason for not going into the famous shops in the capital. Berya sees right through him regarding the extortion and even wonders if he should kill the shop owner. But just then, the door swings open and none other than Louise, the Mad Princess, and the head of the Dwarven Guards show up. Shocked, Berya looks at them and realizes who they are, and they are in search of Logar. While they ask the shopkeeper if he has ever come across the Dwarven hero, Berya hopes Louise doesn't recognize him since he used a magic item to protect his identity when they clashed back then. The shopkeeper then tells them he can't help them out unless they purchase something from him. This immediately pisses Louise off, so she charges right at him with her blade and warns him to know his place for trying to extort her. Still, the shopkeeper doesn't back down and he tells her that murder is prohibited in the capital, and if she wants to threaten him, she should at least buy something. Despite his life on the line, he doesn't back down, but then tells them that if they purchase anything from him, then he will accept the punishment. Surprised at his courage, Louise laughs at him and calls him an interesting fella. She asks him to show her what he has, and he shows them the same item he tried selling off to Berya, but this time around he calls it archipowder, saying it's very useful to dwarven masters. There, Berja realizes the man is a full-blown scammer, and he watches him sell off the item for 3 gold. Louise, who doesn't know how to bargain, pays, and it has the shopkeeper internally rejoicing. Right after, she asks him if he has seen Logar, but the man tells her it's his first time hearing her name. He then lies to her to head to a place which he calls famous for blacksmiths, so she can meet up with someone who'll probably know Logar. With that, they take off, noting that the shopkeeper acted shamefully. After the dwarves leave, Berta commends the keeper for his guts, and the man says he had to try since Louise looked like a noble. The Khan shopkeeper then tries his luck with Berya by asking for 10 gold to let him in on a secret. Berya, who had seen through his trick, internally commends the keeper, so he tells the man to head to Golden Moon Merchant Guild and tell them he was sent by the mountain, for them to accept him. Surprised, the keeper wonders why he should head there and then rejects the place, saying it's bankrupt, so he won't fare there. Berya then reveals that the man had just scammed Louise, the dwarven mad princess. Stunned, the shop owner let go of the powdered bottle, shattering it in the process. He then stutters while asking Berya what he wants. Berya repeats the offer and promises to pay him a gold coin per month, else he'll call Louise back. As a result, the keeper immediately pleads with him before arguing with Berya, thinking Berya is trying to scam him. To him, since there was no way the dwarf he just did business with was Louise, since she shouldn't come all the way to the outskirts, he dares Berya to bring Louise back. As instructed, Berya steps out of the shop and moments later, Louise storms in looking very angry, and the man realizes he's doomed. He gets mollywopped, and after a while, Berya emerges with the Senial powder he always wanted. This time around, it's green like he remembered. He then notices Louise, who is surprised to see him, and she thanks him for helping her get her money back. Curious, he asks her what she did to the shopkeeper, so Louise tells him that the shopkeeper was saved thanks to the law. If not, she would have ripped out his heart. Berya sees that she's still as eccentric as ever, and upon hearing her mention heart, he remembers something important, so he confirms from her that she's looking for Logar. Once he sees how she is on the matter, he shows them Logar's necklace, saying he found Logar 2 months ago by chance in a tropical forest in Ormus. Back then, Berya shared some supplies with him, since Logar was starving, and Logar gave him his necklace as thanks. Annoyed and happy that she has gotten a clue, Louise thanks Berya, noting that she's owing him once again. She wishes she can welcome Berya to her palace with drinks for days, but she needs to catch Logar before he escapes, so she hands Berya her royal emblem that can be exchanged to get the best equipment in the kingdom. He takes the emblem and watches her storm off with the royal guard, who learns that Louise wants to ask for reinforcement from the dwarven ruler to capture Logar. After she leaves, Berja recalls the heart Louise had mentioned and notes that he had forgotten to take note of something, because he was focused on avoiding the path of a typical demon. He notes that around this time in his previous life, Draxen had found and absorbed the heart of a certain mystic beast and gained overwhelming power, and that was the only thing that Berja truly desired. Since he still knew the dimensional interference is greatly affecting him, which is why, if he fights Louise, who is heavily amped with high-level equipment, he'll barely beat her. Now to get revenge on the heroes and to survive the current dimension, Berja has to do one thing: increase his own power.